guess this is on already. Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for a very enjoyable evening also yesterday. You might be thinking, what does NATO to do with innovation and deep tech? So NATO has been working in this field for a long time. A couple of years ago, we asked ourselves the question, how can we do more? Recognizing that there are specific challenges within deep tech, and also that defense and security really are relying on our ability to bring those deep tech innovations into impact, moving all the way from idea to impact. So for us at NATO, entrepreneurship is obviously about building companies. It's about building profitable companies. But it's first and foremost about building impact into defense and security. And I think if you look back on the things that are ongoing in the world right now, I think for a lot of us now and for many governments are now also acknowledging that deep tech innovation and a focus on entrepreneurship touches base on everything that has to do with defense and security as well. So as we were developing Diana stands for the Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic, and also the NATO Innovation Fund, we were simply asking ourselves a very fundamental question. How can we create an organization and programs that in a systematic way can appreciate our, what we call heretical ideas? If we look back at science, there is, in the history of science, there's always a definition of what is the right thing. What is the right thing to think about? What is the current paradigm? And many times the next step, the next revolution lies in the biases that define in that paradigm. So what we've created is both an accelerator and the funding mechanisms with equity investments that are able to bring those heretical ideas into the world, and in that sense trying to make what we call our deep tech heretics our heroes. Yesterday I was on a panel and I gave the example of how DARPA at a very early stage were able to invest in already in 2011 and then in 2013 into two companies that were working on something very science fictional called mRNA. And that everybody at the time saw it as exactly something that was outside of the paradigm. They were heretics at the time. And at that time, DARPA was one of the few agencies that appreciated that and was able to do so. And actually fund those so that when COVID hit, luckily, we had started funding those organizations called Moderna and CureVac at that time, so we were able to develop quite quickly a COVID vaccine. So how do we sort of, in a systematic way, build an organization that can focus on exactly that? Our answer is an accelerator program. An accelerator program that will be what we call challenge-driven. Challenge-driven means that we take a lot of inspiration from DARPA. So we'll have challenges, and we'll have challenge managers who will be developing a specific challenge, let's say within quantum sensing. And within that area, being very detailed and very sort of discrete in defining a specific challenge that if it is solved, it can be very, very impactful, both in the commercial world, but also can be very, very impactful for defense and security. When you then enter the accelerator, think about the accelerator, if you know accelerators like Y Combinator, Techstars, and stuff like that you then, as a startup or an entrepreneur, you enter this accelerator, you enter a program like a fellowship, where you're able to go through an education to become an entrepreneur within deep tech, very much focused on the specific challenges that you have in this area, and obviously also on defense and security. You get a scholarship. And one of the key things that we've built into the program, is one of the key sort of value points that I also talked about yesterday, is that as you enter the accelerator, which will be highly competitive, you'll also have the access to an enormous amount of labs across the alliance. So for example, in the quantum area, if you enter with a startup in that area, you'll at the same time also get access to the Niels Bohr Institute in Copenhagen, focusing on how you can then use their lab facilities to advance your idea. So we've tried in this sense to target one of the critical problems within deep tech, which is to have this continuous access to advanced experimentation. We have another saying about the accelerator, which is that another principle is that we said it needs to be a jungle, not a zoo. So in that sense, we've built in that it's highly competitive. So some startups will join, but at some point, they'll also have to leave, because we do not believe that they're advancing fast enough, and what they're going for is not going to be feasible anyway. And we actually believe that that is the right thing to do. The best thing that you can do for an entrepreneur is to actually have them sort of reflect upon, should I do something differently? So that, in a way, we have a very sort of competitive program. At the end of that program, you'll be working with a lot of people within defense and security, which can then start working, you can then start working with end users that can then continue developing your program, and you can even receive contracts so that you can actually bring your product to the market. Solving, once again, one of the problems that we touched upon yesterday in the panel, the exact problem of how you actually create a demand signal when you're in deep tech. Because the problem is that you often develop solutions, but there's no bias to the solution. So we need to integrate that directly into the program, which we have then done. The NATO Innovation Fund will then be able to do equity investment, seed investment, Series A, and potential follow-on investments. It is, in a way, the world's first multinational venture capital fund, where the limited partners are the allies of NATO. The two initiatives are separate. Diana is a separate organization, and the fund is a separate organization. But what it enables, I have those two initiatives, is that once again we can solve the problem of having that early stage equity investments into those startups that are then going through the accelerator. That doesn't mean that the innovation fund needs to sort of, it's not conditioned to invest into those great startups going through the accelerator, but it can. So in that sense, we have created two initiatives, all the way from idea to impact, and have tried to solve those critical problems that we see within deep tech. First of all, we need to start with something that is solution-driven from the start. So we have identified a specific problem that might be tackled using, let's say, quantum sensing. You then go through a program where we will teach you how to be a deep tech entrepreneur that is actually specific to deep tech entrepreneurship, because actually most programs, most accelerators in their training are not targeted deep tech. They're targeted many, many other things, but they're not actually targeted deep tech. And we've built in the access to the labs across the alliance. And then afterwards, you can then receive equity investments so that we can actually bring it to the market. Because at the end of the day, we are only a success if we're able to, as we said, move from heretics to heroes. That means that we need to be able to actually invest in those ideas that few actually believe in. But at the same time, if you do not actually also at the same time, bring them to the market, work with them to have contracts, give them money to actually develop their product, we're never going to get it actually to the market to see whether this actually can be impactful or not. So in that sense, we have a very challenge-driven program. It's highly ambitious. We've taken a lot of learnings from working with DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, for many years. So hopefully, in the future, within the next 6 months to a year, you'll see some exciting programs that if you are within deep tech, you look at those programs and say, I want to be part of that. I want to be part of actually developing that type of solution based on the research that I've done. Thank you.